Alright, so yesterday I signed up for character.ai, which is something I saw some people talking about around a month ago. So maybe I'm a little late to this, but I was having some fun experimenting with stuff and had this idea and thought I would share it. Once again, it says right up there, it should go without saying, none of this is real. This is an AI of Masahiro Sakurai by Silver Zephyroth. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly. And like I said, this is on the beta for character.ai, and this is the only one of Masahiro Sakurai on here at this time. But yeah, at first I was going to see about sort of having a conversation to sort of build a roster for a next Smash Bros. Game, but right away there was an issue. So you can kind of read some of it right here, but basically there was a little discrepancy. He says they know 80 characters right now, and that everyone's going to be here. Well, everyone being here, according to the Smash Bros. Website, would mean that there are 82 characters. And I don't know the way this was going. Like, I know it says 105 in the final game. But yeah, like how I asked about Newcomers and didn't really get a straight answer. It wasn't going as well as I liked. And then I had sort of another idea just to sort of, as you can see down there, where I would just ask the series with the word newcomer after it and see what comes up. See what AI Sakurai says is our next character for each franchise, and a few other scenarios I had too. So as you can see right away, things aren't perfect, because he obviously mentions adding Daisy, who is already in Smash, and this happened a couple times, particularly with newer characters and echoes. So it isn't perfect, but I guess you could sort of interpret this as maybe Daisy gets decloned. I've seen some cool movesets people have come up with for that concept. And obviously mentioning Waluigi makes a lot of sense. I feel like he is one of the most, for better or worse, discussed characters in terms of newcomers for Smash in general, let alone from the Mario series. I was a little surprised with Zelda. I guess when I saw Toon Zelda and Tetra, I kind of thought of that old supposed Brawl data mine where people said that they thought they were planned at some point. But then a few other characters are mentioned. I'm surprised they didn't mention Skull Kid, or perhaps any of like the newer characters who might be a little more relevant in searches right now, like any of the 4 champions. Impa not being mentioned either. But overall, these are all relatively popular characters. Not too shocking, but a little surprising. Kirby and Pokemon, there's not a lot to really say. He says Bandana Waddle Dee right here, which is probably the character you hear most about when it comes to a new Smash fighter from Kirby. Pokemon, he goes to Decidueye. So I'm thinking they may have pulled this from before Ultimate, because, well, I just feel like once we got Incineroar, Decidueye's support just sort of died down, and now there's newer games in that. So that seems a little dated, but remembering a little Smash history leads that to not be super shocking either. When asking about Metroid, he brings up the 2 characters that were added in Ultimate. Once again, I guess you can interpret this as decloning Dark Samus, which also there's a lot of potential for, so. I will say this next one's a little interesting here with Star Fox and Crystal. I just like how he sort of goes into the detail on why some of the fans have been wanting to see Crystal with the variety compared to everyone else she would bring from Star Fox. So not super surprising, but it is nice to see a little more detail than usual, I guess, and accuracy with the idea. Something else I just remembered from the Kirby thing from earlier is that he mentions that he has a soft spot for Bandana Dee, but I don't know if that would necessarily be accurate, because I think Bandana Dee did debut in a Sakurai produced Kirby game, but he wasn't really utilized during the spotlight until Sakurai left the Kirby series in HAL, so obviously I don't know anything there. Also, the spelling of King DDD there too, but Just another something I thought I would point out. After that, he talks about Dixie Kong for a new Donkey Kong rep, which once again, that makes sense. But I kind of like how he goes off on, like, oh, we can have a mechanic where her and Diddy are selected, that they can sort of partner up in the battle. I don't think that would obviously necessarily work to have two characters, if they're selected, almost automatically be teammates, but I think the potential of having two specific characters chosen, having them have some sort of unique interaction in battle, whether it be some sort of attack or counter, like, there is some potential in that idea. It isn't something I would have really thought of, but who knows. With Yoshi, I was surprised. I thought he would say Poochie, but then he just says the Woolly World Woolly Yoshi, which is surprising. I guess this wouldn't, because I think the one we have in Smash is the one from Crafted World. So this, I think the Woolly one was a little more unique in terms of aesthetic compared to normal Yoshi. So it's better than that. I do like the particular excitement there seems over giving Yoshi more color variants, I guess, too. That's not something you really hear about, like, oh, I really wanted to add this character because of the possibilities for alternate colors. This F-Zero one was kind of crazy, though. I didn't know. Is Blood Falcon a bounty hunter? I thought he was... Like, I'm not super familiar with F-Zero lore, but I thought Black Shadow sort of created him to assassinate Captain Falcon. But maybe that's correct. I don't really know there. But it's a very odd choice. And it's acknowledged, like, oh, Black Shadow's probably the one people most care about and want. But I'll make him an echo of Blood Falcon to make up for it. Like, out of those two, Blood Falcon's going to be the one that's going to be unique. Earthbound's one I was a little concerned about the way I wrote it, because I think he might only be looking at Mother 2 as opposed to the whole series. He obviously particularly mentions Paula, which is surprising. I thought even if you were restricting it to that one game, maybe it would be like Jeff or Porky, I think, is in it, Gigas. But no, he went with Paula, and it's just... And this is like the one time I think too he was kind of like, well, I don't really want to add a character here. Retro Nintendo character was a tough one. I had to sort of delete and reword it to get something that made sense to come up. Obviously here, the Ice Climbers are mentioned again. And obviously, Dig Dug is mentioned, which isn't a Nintendo property. But I did get a retro Nintendo property, Nintendo-owned property, being Excite Bike, so I consider that good enough. Fire Emblem's kind of funny. He mentions that he believes it's always a crowd pleaser. And then he once again forgets that Crom's already in the game or just has plans to declone him. Also mentions, almost makes it sound like Awakening is the latest game. With this, though, even with, like, Dark Samus and Daisy, I can see some separation, some potential in decloning. Crom, not as much. It is worth noting, before I started messing around with this stuff, I had a separate conversation where I just asked how many Fire Emblem characters are going to be in the next Smash. He said 5, and he also said Alear will be one of them too, so... That's what I thought I was going to get here too, that he would mention Alear, especially when I saw the latest game, but no. Actually, similar with F-Zero, when I saw Bounty Hunter Rival, I was thinking he was going to say Samurai Goro. Kid Icarus was kind of surprising too. I thought he would say Medusa or Hades, but apparently people want Viridi so bad that they're yelling at him to add Viridi on his way to work. Yikes, can you imagine that? Was there ever actually a quote where Sakurai said that adding more WarioWare characters would be redundant? Because I don't know where that would have came from. I mean, him saying Ashley, yeah, that makes sense, but that other part was kind of out there, like many of the other things here. Metal Gear, I like this one. I like how when I saw him mention Raiden, I said, oh, before I finished reading, okay, Raiden, wait, what? Jetstream Sam? I mean, I'm down for that, but I don't know. I feel like more people might be pushing for Senator Armstrong instead, so Yeah, this one was something. The Sonic one surprised me too. The first two characters I thought of aren't even here. Were Tails and Robotnik. He obviously mentions Shadow or Knuckles, which are obviously come right to mind too. But then he particularly goes with Blaze the Cat. I'm not super familiar with the character. I guess, is she a rival character like Shadow? I mean, I don't know. I can kind of see it though. Doesn't she sort of have like telepathic magical powers in that? And she could sort of represent, I think she was in like a Game Boy set of games, so I feel like she is pretty under the radar, but when I think about it, maybe not as much as I once thought. The Pikmin one was really good too, where he obviously before he didn't really mention specifically sort of upgrading characters away from being a clone or a costume, but here with Alf, he just outright says, yeah, he could be more than a costume, which I find that's pretty good. And mentioning a couple other characters doesn't hurt either. I think this is one of the few times, well, I guess in the Sonic one he also brought up 3, but I don't think that was super common either. I think I was surprised when I saw it continue on, too, thinking he was just going to elaborate more on Charlie or Louie. With Animal Crossing, he brings up Isabelle, who's already in, so if Isabelle's already in, I assume his second choice here, Tom Nook, would be next in line, so we'll go with that. Not surprising there, really, at all either. I wasn't sure what I was going to get when I put Wii Newcomer, but he wound up going with Matt from Wii Sports, which I guess makes sense. I think he became a bit of a meme. But yeah, I really wasn't sure how the AI would interact with that, if they would get confused with the system or whatnot. And then it's like, then it talks about the Wii Sports avatars, which are the Miis, so, but then it elaborates on a specific one. And then there was even questioning, is this technically like also Nintendo Switch Sports avatars? But yeah, luckily he elaborated with a decent result I wasn't expecting. Mega Man, honestly, a series I'm not too familiar with. Bass, I think, makes sense. He's a character I'm also familiar with. I guess I'm a little surprised that we didn't get like X or Zero, because I know they're both pretty popular. Or even Proto Man, who literally only talked about bass. This Punch-Out one was pretty good too. I like how, I mean, you can read it. It talks about the potential of King Hippo, but he wants Glass Joe to be the joke character, which I like the acknowledgement of that type of thing. And like I said, we didn't get anything like this really before or after. Actually, later I would even try to ask for a joke character, and I was just getting Waluigi and Tingle. After that, he says Miss Pac-Man. I mean, obviously, there's licensing issues here, but obviously I don't think the AI is super aware of that, maybe. But the thing that's interesting here is that he particularly mentions Sakura from Street Fighter. I mean, I assume Miss Pac-Man being one of the first female video game characters, and maybe the AI picking up, hey, we're talking about a fighting game. Sakura is a really popular female fighting character. But even then, why Sakura and not Chun-Li? Or even someone else from another series like Nina Williams. That's odd, and mild spoiler alert, it comes back up when we go to our Street Fighter newcomer. Xenoblade was probably the toughest answer to get a straight answer. Toughest series to get a straight answer for. Because he kept just naming multiple characters who weren't in Smash and wasn't really favoring one of the other. So this is the closest I got. Obviously forgetting about Shulk and adding Rex. He did also mention Elma before, as well as Mithra individually and Xenoblade 3 getting something, but not elaborating any more than that. Oh yikes, didn't even have to wait long to get back to Street Fighter. Rashid is kind of an out there pick too. I was thinking it would pull like Chun-Li, Bison, maybe Guile. But that's kind of fun. But then he once again goes off on Sakura. I don't know, maybe because Sakura and Sakurai are closely spelled. Maybe that's what's going on there. But I just think that's kind of funny. Especially that it just happened twice. Apparently Gino's a Final Fantasy character. I will give a little slack there. Obviously also being from a Square RPG. I don't really know much about Mario RPG or if there's any sort of ties between that and Final Fantasy either, so I was once again worried he was going to elaborate on one of them, the one that's already in the game or the one that doesn't really make sense, but luckily he once again elaborated more with Tidus. This is an interesting one too. Obviously he mentions the popularity of Rodin, but then he goes, particularly Crizella from the first game. Once again, I have the Bayonetta games, but I just haven't played through them yet, particularly the Wii U version with 1 and 2. So I can't really comment much on that. But yeah, this seems oddly specific. But I guess if the AI sort of connects Bayonetta and Crizella, then I guess maybe it's not that insane, but it still mentions another Bayonetta character. So apparently the Octoling thing in Splatoon was confusing for the AI because it also thinks Octodad is a Splatoon character. And oddly, it goes for just Callie. I mean, yeah, I think it makes sense. I see some people talk about the idols from Splatoon as a new Smash rep before, but I'm surprised Marie didn't also get mentioned at all. And also happy the AI didn't once again sort of talk about Octodad and Octoling and then elaborate on Octodad, which wouldn't have worked. So here with Castlevania, he once again goes off on characters already in the game, but then he mentions Alucard. I mean, obviously, I kind of like that because, once again, Alucard was someone actually mentioned by Sakurai. But obviously a bit of a typo there. I did actually post the results of this on Smashboards earlier today. And one of the other users, I don't know if this existed before, if they threw it together real quick, but I want to give credit where credit's due. This is from another user on there of just a cart with Alucard's hair and like his hand with the sword in that, which I appreciated. But yeah, I even had to specify, nope, that's not a typo on my end. That's what AI Sakurai said. Right here, he once again talks about the Phantom Thieves. Actually, maybe. Oh, I guess he says personally he would go with you, Narukame. So, but first I interpreted the Phantom Thieves thing as him sort of referencing Joker, but he doesn't mention him by name. So maybe a Phantom Thief character, kind of like Hero with all the different ones. I don't know if that would work or not. Mentioning the costumes again too, but I feel like this is a bit of a different case, being fully fledged other characters as opposed to colored alts. Oh wait, never mind, I misread that. He's talking about how they have costumes in the game, I guess referring to the Mii costumes. But either way, and once again him mentioning Persona 4, I think that's pretty logical as well. I wasn't sure if you would touch on Jack Frost with the whole weird connection between SMT and Persona. Dragon Quest was another weird one. Once again, I'm not too familiar with the franchise, but he mentions Dragon Quest XI Hero, which I believe is the default one in Smash. I mean, this can be interpreted as making, separating him from the costume and the hero fighter and as his own thing, I guess, especially when he talks about bringing in his particular abilities in that. And I think Dragon Quest III is the one with Erdrick, which is, I think, once again, not super familiar with the franchise, but from what I've seen in the past, I think that's supposed to be the really popular retro one. So interesting, though, that he says just more characters there in general and not just naming Erdrick. Also surprised that he didn't mention Slime at all. Banjo-Kazooie, not too much of a surprise, mentions the two really popular choices. I guess the fans want Gruntilda, he wants Mumbo Jumbo. Sounds like he's going with the fans here, I guess. From Fatal Fury, we have a little debate here between the Howards, Geese, and Rock. I am a little surprised. I wasn't sure if the AI would pick up on Geru, Mark of Wolves being a Fatal Fury game, but it did. Arms once again mentions Min, who's already in, but the next only other thing mentioned is Springman. Actually, I think that matches how it worked in real life, too. Was wondering if we might get Ribbon Girl or Twin Tail mentioned, because I think they're pretty popular, too. Or was Kid Cobra? No, it was Ninjara, who was the other one who got a Mii costume, who was also pretty popular. Minecraft, once again, just sort of ignores Steve's there, but then mentions Alex as a unique fighter. I wasn't sure what else I would get from this. I don't know if you would have really dove into the different mobs in that. especially with Minecraft, where a lot of them sort of, I don't know, besides Creeper, a lot of the really popular ones are just generic names in that. I wasn't sure how deep the AI would have dived there. For Tekken, no mention of Kazuya, which, given some of the other characters absent, it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't mentioned, regardless of whether or not he was in Smash. Once again, similar to what happened in real life, Hayachi's mentioned, but he goes with something else, particularly wanting King or Paul Phoenix. I would personally go for King. Yeah, because now that I think about it, 3 characters came up more than I really thought. Once again, Sora's mentioned, forgetting he's already there, but then he particularly mentions Riku, so we're all good. And once again, I don't know a lot about Kingdom Hearts. I'm a little surprised. I thought this is one where we might get other characters mentioned besides Riku, like Roxas or something, but it works and isn't super surprising to see Riku mentioned. So this was sort of where I started to use different prompts. I wanted to see if I can get an answer for what the next series from each company could be. It was tougher. I had to sort of reword it a couple times, but this is sort of the best results I got. Sometimes he did mention the series that were already here, like right now he's mentioning Metal Gear again, only this time forgetting Snake's back and also mentioning Big Boss. But was finally able to get him to mention a new series, which would be Silent Hill. A little surprised. I thought he might mention Bomberman. Or even Goemon, maybe. With Sega, he sort of backtracks on his earlier stuff and sort of is looking more at Shadow, but I'm surprised he particularly went with Jet Set Radio. That is a very great choice. I love Jet Set Radio and goes with the 2 main characters there. Makes sense. I don't know, though. I thought he would go with someone. I mean, I wasn't really expecting like a Dragon, given that just sort of got rebranded. But I don't know, maybe Super Monkey Ball or something. Virtua Fighter. Right here is another interesting one where he backtracks on earlier statements and is now looking at Jin from Tekken. And once again, I'm just sort of kind of ignoring these. I'm just trying to get a different series out of him. But this one's really interesting because he dives into a specific character being Taki from Soul Calibur. I don't really know where this came from. I thought if anyone from Soul Calibur got mentioned, it would be Nightmare. Maybe Siegfried. And I would have even thought someone like Kilik, Ivy, or Mitsurugi would have been mentioned before Taki. Maybe it has to do with the whole looking for more ninja characters when Greninja was added thing. Square Enix, he goes and mentions Cloud again. Which makes sense, it's what happened, but here he, on a more personal note, Bravely Default. Don't know much about the series. I know Agnes has been sort of rumored before. I don't really know who Adia is, but I am sort of happy to see another couple names, couple ideas show up. Platinum kind of went as expected, once again mentioning Bayonetta and then going on with Wonderful 101. I feel like those are their 2 most well-known series at the time that they own. Here with Atlas, yeah, because I realized for just about every single one of these, he first goes off about the character already in Smash, which is Joker in this case. He does go through and sort of differentiate Persona from SMT, particularly mentions Jack Frost, who is all I thought would be mentioned, honestly. Or maybe Nahobina, or whoever the new protagonist is. But then he mentions Velvet Room Residence. I haven't played SMT, so I don't really know what that means. I think the character Igor may reside there. I don't know if there's other characters, if this is meant to be Igor, or just a general mob of the SMT games. But yeah, that was definitely an interesting way to word that part of the response. With Microsoft, or between Master Chief and Ori, a little surprised that I thought it would just be flat out Master Chief. But yeah, kept going. This one's interesting too, particularly mentioning King of Fighters, which isn't surprising when talking about another SNK characters, but particularly mentions King of Fighters 97. I have no idea where that came from. I don't know. Is that supposed to be the most popular one? Was that maybe one that he particularly mentioned in the Mr. Sakurai Presents? I don't really remember, but that's what was said. I've got 2 more, just miscellaneous ones. I have a new company, which I misspelled, but luckily it knew what I was saying. But I thought I would have to, like, okay, I got a name of a company, now I try to get a name of a series and try to get a name of a character. Luckily I didn't do that. He pretty much says Gordon Freeman in Half-Life and Shaw from Portal, which is a little surprising, I think, actually. I mean, I don't know, I guess. I don't know. So I was going to say, out of like the rest of the companies, I guess maybe Valve comes first to mind when it comes to companies not in Smash that are really big, but then there's also Sony, there's Rockstar. I don't know if you would really count Ubisoft, who's kind of there, EA, Activision, for right now. There's a lot of big ones, so that's kind of surprising. In here, once again, I try to get a new Nintendo series. Once again, it's almost like everything from Shulk after didn't happen, you know? Because then I guess Duck Hunt, well, I guess Xenoblade doesn't count, I guess, in this case, because I think Duck Hunt was the next series mentioned that actually made it into Smash. Although Xenoblade, that can maybe be a little weird, I don't know. With how Monolith used to be independent, but now they're owned by Nintendo. So I guess if you consider that situation maybe a little confusing for the AI to pick up on, then Duck Hunt would actually make sense with what happened. And then Rhythm Heaven is mentioned as well, which was a series, especially at that time, that was mentioned a lot for a new character. No mentions of specifics like the chorus men, though. One last thing I have is I did ask about a character being cut. This was once again before I did this, and I started fresh when I was doing this whole thing, so I lost this other answer I got, but was particular mention that Sephiroth is not going to return to focus on other villains like Ganondorf. So that's where it pretty much ends. Like I said, this is just a for fun thing, kind of funny and interesting to see what the AI comes up with this sort of thing, and I'm sure many other things. I've been having fun messing around with this, so yeah, no, just another random thing I got distracted with I thought I would share, especially too when I can talk about Smash Bros. Especially now in between games when there isn't a lot to talk about.